Athens. I'm your city manager, Seth Sumner, here with your daily COVID-19 update. It is Monday, April 9th, 2020, and we will start with our Tennessee Department of Health update to see what COVID-19 is doing to Tennesseans all across our great state. So we want to pull up and the site that we're using that you have access to as well, and you can see the 800 number for public information so that you can have the exact same information that we're sharing with you. We pull it up here, and I'll show it on screen now. The laboratory type, the positive and negative tests, and the total tests. So today, April 9th, we have a total of 4,634 positive cases in Tennessee, and that is out of 59,849 total tests, leaving 55,215 negative results. I have mentioned the age groups that are most impacted by COVID-19, and the 21 to 30-year-old age range is still leading, and there has unfortunately been one death in that age group. But you can see the 51 to 60-year-olds are actually catching up and pretty close to that 21 to 30 number now. However, it is affecting them a lot more with 9 deaths. There are now, unfortunately, 94 fatalities in Tennessee. Our thoughts and prayers are with those families that have lost loved ones during this time to this virus. Good news on our recovered number. This is a big spike from yesterday even of 921 recovered Tennesseans from this virus. There's also race, ethnicity, and sex information now being included, but I continue to look at our hospitalizations, and we just mentioned deaths, but hospitalizations are now 505 Tennesseans in the hospital who need that assistance, that acute care in hospital beds, using ventilators, maybe even in ICU units to be able to recover from COVID-19. We have more good news to share with you in McMinn County. We are now on the 16th day straight of having no further COVID positive tests. We are now at 271 total tests in McMinn County. That is 268 negative and only 3 positive. And so we're very thankful and blessed here in McMinn County to remain again another day at only 3. No other positive cases in 16 days. That is tremendous. And James, if you'll zoom out, I will introduce our guest. And let me switch my screen around as well. There we are. Today, I have with me our McMinn County Economic Development Authority Executive Director, Ms. Kathy Price. We're able to, happy to have you with us today. And I know something that we've talked about several times with the update is the impact that this is having on McMinn Countyans. And so economic development is something that we're all very cautiously watching right now, as some positions have been furloughed in some companies. We know a lot of small private businesses have just closed their doors temporarily, and a lot of people are being affected by this virus. And so to help us dive down a little bit more into the situation, what it means for our businesses, what it means for employers and employees, and maybe some of the resources that are available for our folks in the county who've been hit hard by this virus already. So thank you for being with us.
Sure.
And I think it's fair to probably start with a basic understanding so that all of our viewers know exactly what is the Economic Development Authority.
Yeah, thanks for having me today, Seth, and appreciate all the viewers out there and tuning in. It is a very important time in our community, and just to give you a little background, McMinn County Economic Development Authority is a public-private partnership. We are a nonprofit, but we work daily to help create jobs and retain jobs here in McMinn County. We work mostly with our manufacturers, our distributors, and those type of industries. And about 85% of our existing industries, that's where we see the most of growth. Those are the companies that have some of the higher wages in our community, and some of the ones that are being affected really hard right now. We've been working daily with them in trying to get resources out in their hands for themselves and their employees. So that's who we are. Sometimes we work behind the scenes, so you don't see us out in the public as much because we're working sometimes outside of Tennessee trying to draw companies here as well as working with our existing industries.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. How are our industries and their employees currently being affected by COVID-19?
Well, unfortunately, a lot of them have had to furlough their employees. A lot of them are on partial or full shutdowns right now. And some of that's a result of, we have a cluster of automotive supply industries here in McMinn County, and our auto assembly plants have closed their doors, so there's no work, or work has paused with them. So those are what's hurting us the most. I mean, those are some of the strongest economic drivers that we have, that and small businesses, which are considered businesses with less than 500 employees, which may not seem that small to you, but as far as the Small Business Administration, it is less than 500 employees. So what we're doing is we've been in response mode, reaction mode for the last 3 weeks as our industries are doing layoffs and helping them to give resources to provide their employees as well as themselves. One of the things I'd point out is one of the data sets that we track is unemployment. And as of February, we had an unemployment rate of 4.2%. And we typically, in the first quarter, we see seasonal employment. So we're usually around that 4%, which is a healthy economy. But right now, I mean, in the state of Tennessee, we've almost seen 500,000 people file for unemployment now since this has hit us. Just to give you some reference, there's 3.5 million people that are within the labor force in the state of Tennessee, and usually in a given month, there's usually about 100 to 110,000 people unemployed. So we've had just this last week alone, we had over 112,000 people file for unemployment. So that just sort of gives you, it's a double of what's already unemployed that we've seen just this last week. Systems are bogged down. So we're really trying to provide resources for our industries, provide resources for their employees. So we've sort of switched our focus a lot from what we were doing previously.
And still being able to provide the necessary service that matters most to making sure that we're pairing resources up with the need in the community.
Absolutely. And behind you, or on the screen, you'll see an unemployment chart. And this is one of the data sets that I said we track. This is unemployment going all the way back to 1970. So we've tracked that all the way through February of 2020. And you can see, you'll see ups and downs through different cycles in our economy. You'll see here, this would have been the Great Recession. For the year 2009, we hit a high of 14% unemployment rate. However, that rate actually in certain months was much higher than that. We were over 15% at times. So, we are right at the blue line represents a 4.0% unemployment, and that represents a healthy employment, according to economists. So we've been riding that line a little bit dip below for the last couple of years. So, I saw before this that there was probably going to be some adjustment happen over this year and next year, but not to the extent that we've seen in the short term with this virus.
Yeah, so there were already economic indicators that we were looking at the city. Back in December, I actually made a presentation that the factors are there for an economic for a correction, a market correction. And so we've taken that data, but no one had predicted, or it wasn't a thought in our mind locally at least, that a virus would come along in just a few more weeks and we still don't know exactly what it's going to do to us.
We don't, and we'll get into that as well as what our short-term and long-term impacts could be. But right now, my biggest concern is that smallest independently owned company that's out there that's struggling every day. Again, we're working with them and we're trying to figure out ways to help them. And I tell you, they've become resourceful. I mean, I just look at them and how creative and innovative they've become.
So we've talked about, we keep using the term unprecedented. There's nothing to compare this to. There is nothing that has happened in our history that we can compare this to. So during this unprecedented time, what resources are available to our employers?
Well, McMinn County Economic Development Authority has partnered with several of our other organizations within the region and locally to provide some resource guides. And what I'm going to show you today is basically not those resource guides, but I'll show you a way to get to those. But right now, I'm going to start with for small businesses. The Small Business Administration, through the CARES Act, they've opened up several different programs for employers. The Economic Injury Disaster Loan, Emergency Funds, which is you can apply directly through the SBA.gov, and up to $10,000 in forgivable loan advance. So I would recommend that you go out to the Small Business Administration's website, SBA.gov, to get more information on this program. The Paycheck Protection Program was the latest program that was released through the CARES Act. This one has not gone over as smoothly as hoped because we're trying to get so much information and guidelines out as quickly as possible. This one you're going to have to go to your local lender, your local bank to help you with this one. Some of the lenders are only serving customers of their own customers at this point, at least on a first-come, first-served basis. But it's up to $10,000 in forgivable loan advance as long as you keep your employees on payroll for 8 weeks. So your employees must remain on payroll for 8 weeks in order to be eligible for this. The money can be used for payroll, rent, mortgage interest, utilities. But check with your bank or your lender, and they can help you navigate that application if you have an interest. There's also a bridge loan, an express bridge loan, and this would be able to allow you who currently have access with a express lender, so one of your banks, if they offer SBA 7A loan programs or other loan programs to the SBA, to access up to $25,000 quickly. Again, you will need to check with your bank or your lender on this one to see if they're offering that and how to apply for it. And then there's another program that they've released called a debt relief program. And if you already have a loan, a 7A loan, a 504, or a micro loan with SBA through your local lender, that they will, the SBA will automatically pay that principal and interest up to 6 months. And they must originate before September 27th of this year, those loans must be. But again, check with your local bank, your local lender, to make sure they are doing these loans and they can assist you through the process. Another resource is the Small Business Development Center. They're housed out of Cleveland State Community College. They also come here a couple times a week and is at the Lighthouse over on White Street.
Which we heard about yesterday.
Yes, you heard about yesterday.
From Lisa Dotson in Main Street.
They will not fill your forms out for you, but they'll help guide you through the process and help you understand the programs that are available. And if you go to tsbc.org/CLSCC, you can go in there and you can actually request assistance, and it's free assistance, it's at no charge, and you'll get in a queue to be called back. So that's some of the things that are small businesses. Again, our website, and I'll show you that at the end, we've got resources up there for all this and more. that you can tap into to find what you need to do. And if you're a small business, I encourage you to reach out to us, the Main Street Athens, one of your chambers, or the Small Business Development Center for assistance.
Thank you, Kathy. So some good resources for our businesses who are having a tough time right
Absolutely.
now. So we talk about the employers, but what about the employees?
Right.
What kind of resources are available for the employees during this time?
Well, first let me say, my heart goes out to the employers, but it breaks for the employees. I think about these, especially our restaurants and service industries where you have single families that are, maybe working for tips and stuff, and my heart breaks for those that have lost income. So we have pulled some resources together to help those people tap into resources that may not have been available prior to them getting laid off. So I don't have a lot of information. I'm going to direct you a lot to other places, but the most important place that you can go if you need to file for unemployment is jobs4tn.gov. So jobs4tn.gov. And under there, you'll see a link, a drop-down menu that says employees. Drop down through that and go into unemployment and file a claim. There are some frequently asked questions. There are other links here. I think James is going to scroll into that, zoom into it. That's a really good resource of questions and answers to help guide you through that process. There's also a video of how to file a claim. So if you don't know how to file a claim, and believe me, I went through this process just to see how it worked. You can imagine with 112,000 people last week alone trying to get on this website, it's bogged down. So certain times of the day is better. But I went through the process myself just to see how it worked, and it didn't take me quite a while. So just have patience as you go through it. If you have questions, I recommend you call your American Job Center here in Athens. I even called that to see if I got a person, and I did. I was able to talk to a person and ask questions. So they will log your information, try to help you through that process. So please do that. So the maximum benefit in Tennessee is $275 a week. They waived the week waiting period, but under the CARES Act, there's additional $600 per week you may be eligible for. So I encourage you to go out, even if you're self-employed, you need to go out and file this claim. But definitely go through that. If you can turn to the next page, some other resources for individuals is through the Department of Human Services, which we have an office right here in McMinn County for Department of Human Services. They've released an emergency cash assistance program. I won't go through all the eligibility. I'll ask you to go to tn.gov/human services to get all the eligibility of these programs. But it can provide up to 2 monthly cash payments. $500 for a household of 1 to 2 persons, $750 for a household of 3 to 4, and $1,000 for a household with 5 or more people in it. And then you also have your SNAP, your Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. This is what back in the day we referred to as food stamps. I would also ask that you look in there to see if you're eligible for any of that assistance. And then plus, there's been a lot of feeding programs propped up, and we've had some of that, I think, talked about here. The schools are still offering feeding programs. So we've got so many resources through United Way partners and others that are stepping up to the plate, our food banks. So, but just ask for assistance. I've seen neighbors helping neighbors, So don't be afraid just to ask someone for help, because I've seen a lot of generosity through this and a lot of people wanting to help each other. So I think that's all my slides, other than the last one is a way to get on our website. There is a resource guide, as I said. If you'll go to makeitinmcminn.org/about-us/resources, or if you get to makeitinmcminn.org, bottom left hand of the screen, you'll see a little yellow tab for COVID-19. Click on it and it'll take you right to that. And there's several resources more than what I've shared.
Wonderful, thank you. And we'll leave that up for a few minutes so
Yes.
folks can see that as we continue our discussion. So we mentioned the economy, some obvious immediate impact to our local economy that we've seen, and there are some resources that are available to employers and employees. But what are some of those other immediate and long-term impacts that we may be able to begin discussing for our local economy right now?
Well, I think a lot of that's to be seen yet. I did an interview with the Daily Post Opinion, and that's what I told them as well. And it's going to be affected depending on how long these businesses are shuttered. So as soon as we can get people back to work, the better it's going to be.
Yes.
But short term, I think it's going to be painful. But long term, I think that if you looked our past history, look at the Great Recession, we typically come out of it stronger than we have before. So I think it really, at this point, would depend. But I think we're going to come out of it with a lot of pent-up demand for goods and services because people have not been able to get out. They've not been able to go shopping. They're going to have some cash in their pockets. They're going to be able to, through the stimulus check and stuff. So I think there's going to be some pent-up demand. My concern is that the independently owned small businesses, some of those that might have been already teetering on the edge of being able to survive, in those coming back. I think you're going to see some retail establishments, and this isn't just locally, this is, statewide and nationwide. You're going to see some retail establishments that were already in troubles. You've seen the Sears and the JCPenney's, don't know what the fallout will be. I read an article, Logan's Roadhouse had fired all their employees, shut all their stores down, and it's not going to come back, or not looking to come back. So, and we talk about the businesses themselves, but what we don't talk about is the landlords, these shopping center owners. They've got businesses that can't pay their rents, so they're having to look at ways to subsidize rents or do rent abatements. So, it trickles down to all parts of the economy. So I think it's yet to be seen. We also have to look at our government entities and their revenue streams that are coming in. We have to tighten our belts as we move forward. But I think it's yet to be seen, but I think we will come out of this stronger than before. We do still have some active new companies looking, and they're still active. We're still talking to them daily, weekly. So, I think we'll come out of it okay. And I think people need to understand that and not panic. That, this is a strong community. Y'all built strong reserves to be able to hit these rainy day funds that be able to help in times like this.
Yes. In
our organization. So I just ask everybody, just don't panic. I think, the best thing is to look at the past, and we've survived before. We're a strong economy.
That's right.
Strong people.
The real value of history is being able to look back and learn from it. Right. And we can look back and learn that each time we've had these hard times, that we've had these economic recessions, depressions, corrections, it does change the way, it changes some of our behavior, it changes our business models.
Absolutely.
And our vibrant businesses reflect that, and they move on and they grow and learn. And unfortunately, sometimes folks that are unable to, or businesses that are unable to, don't recover from that. But overall, the economy and our people come back stronger than ever.
Absolutely.
After each one of these.
Absolutely.
So I think that's a very good message to share today.
Yes.
So talking about good messages, is there a silver lining in all of this?
I think, if you look around, and you talked about that just now a little bit, I feel like businesses and families have had to get creative, and innovative in how they're dealing with this. You've got restaurants that are offering to go, or offering all these specials for family meal packs or whatever that you can come get. We've got communities. We've got other industries that are looking at how do they adapt their product lines to be able to help in this crisis, to make products that are needed now. So I think what we're seeing is creativity. we've seen families, you know, coming together again, communicating again,
Yes.
relying on the resources we already have at home. We'll make a dinner out of what's already in your pantry and have family time. So I really think that it's brought us to a mindset of how we can be creative, we can be resourceful. And so I really think that's one silver lining. Another one, I think it's brought us together, communities and families. I mean, I can just tout from what we're doing within our organization. It's brought us closer together and working with some other organizations like the Small Business Development Center, Main Street, and the Chambers. I think we've worked closer together through this and communicated more than working in our silos, which we all get busy doing because we have our own missions. So I think it has done that. It's bringing families together, you know. You know, they're playing games at home, watching movies together, going out sometimes to the park, going walking. A friend of mine just a minute ago texted me her and her son was out riding bikes. Some things that we've sort of lost touch of. We're putting the electronics down a little bit more, I think, and getting out in nature. So I think that, and I think it's taught us that we've got to celebrate each other, you know, and appreciate the good that's happening, whether it's celebrating the healthcare workers, our small businesses, our educators. It's taught us not to take those people for granted. Even my person at the city, that public works guy that picks up my trash, I'm so thankful for him right now, you know.
We're still at work for you.
You're still at work. So I've seen on social media, you've got this rally around McMinn, a rally around Athens that's trying to bring good messages. I'm on a social media group, it's Ladies Blessing Ladies, you know, they're sending each other gifts every day. So these people are celebrating each other, and I think that's one thing. But there's so many good things happen, but I don't want to minimize the things, the suffering that we have.
This is still hard.
And citizens, because there are still some suffering, but I do want to celebrate that we have done that, is that I feel like that it has brought together a community and individuals.
There's a very good point in what you were speaking about with the technology that we're those of us that are still being able to transact a lot of our business and hold meetings still virtually, and just like the technology we're using here now, we're doing that more and more to the point that now when we go home, you know, turn it off.
Yes.
You know, we're not going home and doing the same thing and communicating electronically. Turn it off. Let's go for a walk. We can wave to our neighbors who are sitting on their front porch as we walk by. And I've really enjoyed that human aspect because I like seeing and talking to our friends and neighbors. Absolutely. And visiting with them, and we're not able to have that connection now, so it makes it even more meaningful to wave when you're passing someone in a vehicle.
And I think we found ourselves with time, we busy ourselves so much that we don't have time to do those things. And I think this has made us step back and sort of reset our focus and reset and think about what's important. So I think there are some positive messages to come out of this.
Absolutely. So perhaps my final question, we'll see if I can think of any more, but where do we go from here?
Well, I think we need to, as community leaders, we need to continue to be responsive. I mean, even after post-COVID-19 is, you know, how are we responsive to our citizens, to each other? How are we responsive to our business community? So I think that's the biggest message, is how do we continue this momentum of being responsive and working together? I think preparedness is the number one takeaway that we've got to do. Is I think when everybody goes back to work and to their normal routines, I think that everyone, between leaders and families, we need to sit down and take an assessment. You know, during this situation, you know, what went right? What didn't go so good? And what could have been done better? And then let's use those, what we learned from that, and how we are better prepared for the future. You know, we've talked about pandemics for years and how we prepare for them, but I don't know that you can totally and truly be prepared for something unknown. But so, and I think that's the situations, and I think we've got to be patient. You know, that there's better times ahead. We've got to really remember that is that there are better times ahead, and this is just a reset. You know, it's just resetting our focus. It's resetting our communities. And we've had a really good run and a really strong economy, and this is just going to reset that. And you know, we've had bumps in the roads as we talked about in our history, and you know, we're hoping this will just, everything soon will be smoothed out, and then we'll have better times ahead. And I think from the Economic Development Authority's focus is going to be restoring our economy back to where it was, or even better than it was. So I think that's where we've got to do as an Economic Development Board of Directors is just, let's be restoring. Let's be focused on restoration moving forward.
I like it.
So, but I'll leave you with one thing, Good Friday message, if you will.
Please.
And since Easter Sunday, we've got Good Friday tomorrow and Easter Sunday coming up, I don't feel like I can't let Lisa Dotson of Main Street outdo me, although she is so much more eloquent with words. And but I'll just say this, be anxious for nothing, but in everything give thanks, because we do have a lot to still be thankful for, even in these trying times, and we'll get through this together, all of us working together.
Thank you very much, Kathy.
So, thank you.
Been wonderful to have you with us
You too.
today.
I appreciate you having me.
We usually get to see each other a little more often, and,
Yes.
and you're able to telework now, and so we're talking on the phone and email.
Yeah, that's been a
good
little
to be in
bit
person.
more difficult. It's been nice and it's been difficult. My husband works from home as well. He has his office at home, so having two offices at home can sometimes be a challenge, but it's also a blessing because you get to see each other more, and so it's been really nice.
The only stress is the bandwidth.
Yes, it is. It really is. So, but really learning. Actually, been training myself on WebEx for our next executive committee meeting in case we have to, you know, do it by telecom or something. But we're trying to work through that. So thank you, and I appreciate the citizens and the businesses and individuals, employees out there, and your patience as we get through this. So thank you for having me.
All right. Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you, James, behind the camera.
And as I stated yesterday, I did want to share an update of data sets, the healthdata.org, which is out of the University of Washington. And so I did want to walk you through some of those data sets when we get turned over to that. There it goes. And I shared last week this very same data resource with you, and wanted to share again. Last updated yesterday, but this is COVID-19 projections, and this is the same data set that we used last week. And when we showed this last, there was not a stay-at-home order. It had been issued, but the slides had not been updated. It was updated a day or two later. We did have the educational facilities closed statewide on March 20th. However, locally, those were closed on March 13th. And so we were a week ahead of the rest of the state in that sense. And then on March 30th, non-essential services closed. And many of those here locally were already closed. Some of the non-essential services, some of the gathering places, like we talked about, the Arts Center, were all, a lot of those places were already closed to respect public health and be able to help protect us. And so there is not severely limited travel implemented in Tennessee at this time, and I don't think we're not expecting that to occur either. But the stay-at-home order began last week. And so what we wanted to show here was hospital resources. We were looking at April 19th peak use. That has now been dialed back by 2 days to April 17th. And we were showing that we do have 7,812 beds available, and we were showing a bed shortage of just over 7,000 additional beds. We were needing 15,800 and change in beds total, and so our governor FEMA, as well as the Army Corps of Engineers, had already been working last week to bring up to speed 7,000 new beds by utilizing public spaces in Chattanooga, Knoxville, Nashville, and Memphis. And now we are showing that we will have, at peak, more beds available than needed by a long shot, which is wonderful, wonderful news. Now we're only projecting, and these are guesses, okay? These are guesses, but projecting 1,244 beds needed at peak, and we have 7,812. Of the ICU beds for that acute care, those who are in more vulnerable positions who need extra care, ICU, 248 beds needed, and we have 629 available across the state. And looking at down to 211 ventilators needed during this time. And we have the resources required to cover that kind of pandemic in Tennessee. We see that our peak here is moved back rather to April 17th, and we can see where our resources are and what our peak range is here, and we stay within that with these projections. We have more resources than we're projected to need, and that is a wonderful thing. That means everyone that needs acute care or non-acute care will have those resources available to them based upon these projections. Now, the more dire things that we want to look at and talk about, we know that those cases of COVID deaths will continue to increase, unfortunately. We are looking at 9 days until the projected peak of deaths. That is the most deaths per day before that number starts coming back down. And so we're looking at a peak of 25 deaths per day on April 18th is that projected time. And so to show you what that looks like visually, this is coming February, March, no deaths. We get into about the third week of March and we see our first deaths occurring. And then you can see how this is peak and valley has occurred every few days as far as the deaths, the actual deaths. And then here's our projected data set of what we're looking at. Now this is the range in this color here, and this is the projected mean of that data set. And looking right here on April 18th at about 25 deaths that day as the peak. Now looking at what that means in total, last week we were looking at total deaths that were going to be in the range of just shy of 5,000 total deaths, and that is going through August. But we see in this data set, and unfortunately our dotted line is not showing up for you here, but that line peaks with 617 total deaths in May, and stays flat all the way through August. So we are projecting that in May that we will see our final COVID death under this pandemic, and that'll carry us on through the next few months. But 617 total deaths, and that is down from a projection last week of just shy of 5,000 deaths. So this data has been updated every couple days. This data is updated, and these again are just projections. These are best guesses as to what our resources will, how they'll be needed, and to the deaths that we may see from COVID-19. And it has improved drastically because of these measures, the executive orders that our governor has put in place, but mostly this is projecting better data and better numbers from what we were looking at last week because of what you're doing. Because you're staying at home, because you are socially distancing, because you're using proper hygiene. It's because of the work that you, our citizens, are doing that we don't have another positive COVID case in McMinn County now for 16 straight days. That is incredible. That is a blessing. And I hope we're able to continue that. Not a single death in McMinn County from COVID-19 and not a single other case. Keep up what you're doing, staying at home, socially distancing. We're doing our part by staying apart. We'll keep that up, and we'll keep our friends and neighbors healthy and alive through this pandemic. We'll see the other side, and as Ms. Kathy Price stated earlier, we will come out of this stronger than ever. That's the Athenian way, and that's the McMinn County way. Now, what I would like to focus on next week, we'll be bringing in and talking about one of our vulnerable populations, our senior population. So I'll have Ms. Tina South from the McMinn Senior Center with us to talk about how this is affecting the elderly and the active senior population in McMinn County. I'll also have Ms. Paige Szabo with the United Way to talk about how they're helping our neighbors in need right now with food and with taking care of basic needs. There's so much that wonderful organization is doing for our community, and a lot that we can do to help through them. So I'll be happy to host her. And then April, of course, is, as we've mentioned before, Child Abuse Prevention Month. And so we'll have Francis Witt McMinn on the update as well next week to talk about how that vulnerable population is being affected by this pandemic right now and what we can do to help. So I will live stream with you Saturday, but I will be taking off Friday and not providing an update. Tomorrow, Good Friday, I'll be at home with my family and enjoying their company, as well as Sunday. Easter Sunday, we're not turning this back on. We're taking a break to be with the most precious people in our lives, our family. And so I will see you Saturday, and then I'll see you back here Monday to jump back into our regular daily updates. I hope everyone has a happy Easter. I hope everyone has a good Friday. Spend time with those cherished people in our lives that we have within our household. Let's take care of our neighbors in need. Let's do our part by staying apart. May God bless you. May God bless Athens.